Hey everybody, welcome to Go Bold. My name is Jody Atariwala and I'm your host. And I'm coming to you today from Canadian Forces Base Esquimalt in British Columbia. And we are here for the paying off ceremony for the first Kingston-class maritime coastal defense vessels of the Royal Canadian Navy. Now next to me is HMCS Saskatoon. It is one of the 3 MCDVs that's being paid off today. Now what you'll see in this video is a ceremony that celebrates these ships and the service to Canada. So welcome everyone to this episode, and I hope you enjoy this ceremony.
I invite the reviewing officer, Vice-Admiral Angus Topshee, to the dais to begin the official proceedings. Please take your seats. Veuillez vous asseoir. Canadian ships Brandon, Saskatoon, and Whitehorse, the final Kingston-class maritime coastal defense vessels to be decommissioned on the West Coast. We're gathered on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. For thousands of years, the area now known as Esquimalt Harbor was occupied by the ancestors of the people who came to be known as the Songhees and Esquimalt, or Kasepsum First Nations. We acknowledge the Songhees and the Kasepsum's ongoing relationship with the lands and waters of Esquimalt Harbor today, and we thank them for their stewardship. The chaplain will now offer a reflection, followed by the naval prayer. Then, the Naval Band will lead us in the naval hymn. During the naval prayer and hymn, it is optional for guests to remove your caps or headdresses on your own time. I invite the Canadian Fleet Pacific Senior Chaplain, Lieutenant Commander Sharameta, to the podium. Padre.
In the respect of our differing beliefs and individual conscience, I invite you to join me each in your own way. Today, as we gather to recognize all the work done by these ships, the missions they have successfully completed, and the service they provided to our country, we also recognize that a ship is more than the sum of its parts. For the crew, it is much more. It is their home away from home, the place where friendships are forged, and moments of lives both profound and minute unfold. Flats become places of connections, workspaces, places for laughter and learning. Here, hopes are shared, joys are celebrated, and challenges are faced together. Chaque marin qui passe du temps à mer crée, en lien avec son navire, c'est un endroit pour apprendre et grandir, pour être mis au défi au cours de leur carrière. C'est aussi un endroit pour créer de liens, pour créer de souvenirs qui durent toute une vie. From the intensity of workups to the relaxation of sundowners and swimexes, sailors leave a mark on their ship, just as a ship leaves its mark on the sailors. Today, we also give thanks for the crews that walked these decks, who poured out their time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears to keep them sailing, who joined together in every port to land gash and to store the ship, who spent countless hours painting, repairing, and watching over these hulls in ports foreign and domestic, and who also gave their own thanks each time they were brought safely home. We honor the work that was done and the pieces of the lives lived within these halls. Reconnaissant que nous venons de nombreuses traditions et de croyances différentes, rappelons-nous de tous les marins qui ont navigué sur ce navire, alors que nous unissons les marins d'aujourd'hui à ceux des générations passées par la tradition de la prière navale. Recognizing we come from many different traditions and beliefs, may we pause to reflect on why we are here today, calling to mind all the sailors who have sailed on these ships, as we connect sailors of today with sailors of generations past through the tradition of the naval prayer.
Great attention! Remove headdress!
O eternal Lord God, who alone spreadest out the heavens and rulest the raging of the sea, who has compassed the waters with bounds until day and night come to an end, be pleased to receive into thy almighty and most gracious protection the persons of us thy servants and the fleet in which we serve. Preserve us from the dangers of the sea and from the violence of the enemy, that we may be a safeguard unto our most gracious sovereign Lord, King Charles, and his dominions, and a security for such as pass upon the seas upon their lawful occasions, that the inhabitants of our commonwealth may in peace and quietness serve thee our God, and that we may return in safety to enjoy the blessings of the land with the fruits of our labors, and with a thankful remembrance of thy mercies, to praise and glorify thy holy name. Amen.
custom of paying off a ship originates from the days of sail, when part of the crew's wages would be withheld until decommissioning, partly to discourage desertion. When the crew's term of service ended along with the ship's commission, the wages would be settled and the ship would finally be paid off. When a naval ship is commissioned, a commissioning pennant is hoisted at the masthead and flown continuously until the vessel is decommissioned. HMCS Whitehorse in Saskatoon, commissioned in 1998, and HMCS Brandon, commissioned in 1999, still fly their commissioning pennants today. A paying off pennant is a special, longer version of the commissioning pennant produced at the end of a warship's service life. In some traditions, the length of the paying off pennant corresponds directly to the ship's length of service. A paying off pennant 36 meters long, 2/3 the length overall, has been made for each of Brandon, Saskatoon, and Whitehorse. Traditionally, a warship will fly the paying off pennant for its final sail into home port. These three ships flew their paying off pennants last Friday, September 26th, during their repositioning from Yankee Jetty across the harbor to their berth here today at Bravo Jetty. Before we invite our speakers to address the gathering, we now unveil the ship's paying off pennants, which have been preserved for posterity. I now invite the Commander of Canadian Fleet Pacific, Captain Sam Patchell, to address the gathering. Sir?
Alors, bonjour chers invités, familles et amis. C'est un honneur pour moi d'être ici parmi vous aujourd'hui alors que nous nous réunissons pour célébrer la mise hors de service des navires de la défense côtière maritime de classe Kingston. Ces navires ont servi le Canada avec distinction pendant près de 3 décennies. Now, the story of these ships began with the 1987 White Paper on Defense, a document that changed the course of our Navy by giving the Naval Reserve an operational mission for the first time. From that vision came the Kingston-class. 12 ships launched between 1996 and 1999, each proudly bearing the name of a Canadian city, many carrying forward the battle honors from the Second World War. They were designed as multi-role vessels, coastal defense, mine countermeasures, route survey. While their design sparked debate, their performance silenced any doubt. These ships proved themselves time and time again, adapting to every challenge placed before them. Over the years, the Kingston-class expanded Canada's naval reach tenfold. They patrolled not only our coast, safeguarded our sovereignty in the Arctic through operations in the Nunavut, but also represented Canada abroad in NATO missions like Operation Reassurance, in RIMPAC exercises, and in counter-narcotics patrols during Operation CARIBBE. Au-delà de leur rôle militaire, ces navires ont répondu à l'appel dans les moments de crise. Ils ont secouru les victimes du vol 111 de Swissair, bravé les tempêtes pour sauver des vies au large de la Colombie-Britannique et répondu à des situations d'urgence lorsque d'autres ne pouvaient pas le faire. Conçus à l'origine pour naviguer dans les eaux côtières, ils ont sillonné les mers, prouvant que leur capacité dépendait autant de la détermination de leur équipage. Today, as we pay off these ships, we close a chapter of 30 years of service. They were more than steel and machinery. They were a symbol of Canada. They trained generations of sailors and carried our flag across the globe. Their legacy will endure, not only in our history books, but in the spirit of our fleet that follows. À tous ceux qui ont servi le Canada à bord de ces navires, merci.
I invite the immediate past commander of the Naval Reserve and the former commanding officer of HMC ships Edmonton and Saskatoon. Commodore Pat Montgomery to make remarks. Sir.
Thank you. Good morning to all. Admiral, thank you for the invitation to speak at such a singular event, and I appreciate everyone's attendance here today. Standing room only in a day when it could have been pouring out here. That's a deep connection to the class of ships that has been a generational change for the Navy. Merci d'être ici aujourd'hui pour commémorer cette occasion importante. La classe Kingston a eu un impact énorme sur une génération de matelots. Et j'aimerais aujourd'hui donner quelques mots sur ce sujet. Okay. I'd like to just reflect a little bit on the magnitude of what the Kingston-class meant for the people who served. The fleet commander mentioned some of the operations, so I don't need to talk about that. And I also need to communicate, I feel really privileged to be here, having served as a past SEAL of Edmonton and Saskatoon, and probably Lauren Carruth's the only one who remembers this, but Whitehorse for a week, and Brandon for an afternoon when we did a hot boat. So all three behind me. So saying goodbye has a bit of a special significance to me personally. And in the crowd, I do want to note, there's so many notables here, but around 35 years ago, Commodore retired Lorraine Orthley, who's here with us today, was our senior Naval Reserve advisor, predecessor to the position that I held. And at that time, led a Naval Reserve, some of you might remember, with primarily mariner focus and a small array of ships. Patrol boats, ex-minesweepers, gate vessels, YAGs, ex-YFPs, if you remember those, Rapid Rally, Fort Steele, other unit tenders. Well, the MCDV program gave us an inflection point from that, and the new ships became almost a singular focus of where we were going to see. The ships ushered in an operational capability, as the fleet commander mentioned. With my countermeasures, route survey, MCM leadership, and an MCMTA, underwater inspection, and more. Fleet School Quebec took a leading control and training. And Naval Reserve Headquarters retooled to support an establishment designed around getting people to sea on the ships. All signs of the change that was around us. As those new postings became available, Naval Reservists answered the call first, often parking their civilian careers and spending several years in full-time service both at sea and ashore with the new ships. This influx of personnel was essential to the Navy at a time when they needed to crew a new class, and the Navy benefited. A force of new skills, enthusiasm, and initiative that we see today. Those opportunities of full-time service enabled many to contribute and serve at sea in a meaningful way before returning to part-time service, and their civilian employers benefited from that. And I'm happy to say I'm one of the lucky ones that got to experience that as well. But that rapid growth of professional capability was reflected in 24 Naval Reserve divisions across the country. The MCDVs were, as mentioned, a crucible for that personal and professional growth, but a memorable experience for so many sailors. The ships were more than just places for skills and experience, they were a home for many, and created cohesive ships companies with the extended families that surround us today. Cet environnement était uniquement canadien, car des militaires de partout au pays seraient ensemble. Chaque équipage de navire était donc spécial et unique, et je sais que ces liens sont profondément ressentis par ceux qui ont servi en mer. As I see many of my former shipmates here today, I'm reminded of the memories of service at sea together. I'm grateful for the time shared and friendships created. While we easily remember those points of high tempo, excitement, or natural wonder around us, it's important to equally recall those times of sacrifice when we were away from family and friends, and those that we've lost. Some of our colleagues, such as Bill Bowes, Dwayne Earle, and Doug Stark, to name a few. As the Kingston-class contributed to our meetings, those missions at home and abroad, those tasks, as noted, were substantial. The domestic operations, the international operations brought credit to your nation and brought credit to our Navy. À chaque fois, les navires et leurs équipages ont servi avec distinction, établissant des liens avec les Canadiens par leur activité de leur ville éponyme. In conclusion, I would like to thank the generation of Canadians who volunteered to serve in the Kingston-class, and in particular, acknowledge with gratitude HMCS Saskatoon, Whitehorse, and Brandon for always bringing us back home. Admiral, on behalf of all those who have sailed in these ships, thank you for the opportunity to serve. I know that the Navy will feel the impact that has been woven into the fleet for generations to come. Thank you.
The ships being paid off today were named for the cities of Brandon, Manitoba, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and Whitehorse, Yukon. For almost 3 decades, these communities and the crews of these ships have supported each other and built strong, enduring connections. Ships' sponsors are instrumental to connecting ships and their crews with other Canadians. Like a godparent, sponsors start right from the naming ceremony and continue their support at significant events, from commissioning to milestone anniversaries to namesake city visits. While the sponsors of HMC ships Brandon, Saskatoon, and Whitehorse have passed away, the mutual affection they built with successive generations of ships' crews are not forgotten. The reviewing officer will now address the gathering. After the Vice-Admiral's remarks, representatives of the namesake cities and of sponsors will be called forward to receive presentations from Vice-Admiral Topshee. J'inviterai maintenant le commandant de la Marine royale canadienne, le Vice-Admiral Angus Topshee, de s'avancer pour prononcer quelques mots. Monsieur.
Merci. C'est vraiment un plaisir d'être ici parmi vous aujourd'hui pour cette cérémonie très importante. It's a bittersweet moment in a Navy when we decommission ships. And the weather today could not better express our mood. A tinge of sadness, but the possibility of light breaking through at some moment, because the future for the Royal Canadian Navy is bright. And that's in large part because of the incredible things that have been accomplished by these ships. You've heard some of the stories already about what transpired in these ships. I want to highlight that this was the first class of ship purpose-built for our Naval Reserve. Pat did a great job of listing the large variety of craft that had been brought into service to support the Naval Reserve in the past. With the 1987 White Paper, we committed to building something that could build a Navy. And these ships have delivered in spades throughout their career. C'est incroyable de penser à tout ce qu'ils ont fait en service au Canada à travers le monde. Ces navires ont visité l'Afrique, l'Europe, l'Amérique du Sud. These ships have gone far and wide, up and down the American coastline, across the Atlantic to Europe and Africa, and right now 2 of them are serving with NATO in Europe, contributing to Canadian security, continuing to global security. They were also the source of many outstanding firsts. You heard mention of Commodore Lorraine Ortley, who was instrumental in creating this fleet, bringing it into being and delivering a vision of what we could achieve with it. It's great to see Marta Mulkins here, the first woman to command a ship in the Royal Canadian Navy, HMCS Kingston, 22 years ago, I believe. Pretty impressive that we were able to move the yardsticks forward. And for me, it's a particularly bittersweet moment because I have a connection to each of these ships. Saskatoon is where my great aunt grew up and where I loved to visit. And I learned that the prairies were not just flat plains, but occasionally could have valleys around rivers, trees, and other things that might look a bit like home. Brandon was where I navigated HMCS Brandon, and it briefly established, I think, the speed over ground record for the fleet at 22.8 knots. And if you check the max speed of the ships, you'll realize that you had to engineer that with the help of some of the strong currents evident around the BC coast. Whitehorse, I think, was the last MCDV I spent a night at sea upon, and as a fleet commander, it's another beautiful Canadian city, one that most Canadians do not have the opportunity to visit, and yet we can bring a piece of that city everywhere we go. It's exciting to think that the bells that this ship, that these ships used will live on, loaned out to these cities to make sure that they can continue to honor that link. And I want to thank the mayors of Brandon and Whitehorse for coming today. Thank you very much for being here. And so to the future, now, à l'avenir. C'est incroyable à penser qu'il y avait pas vraiment un remplacement pour ce classe de navire. There is no single replacement for this class of ships because they've demonstrated the inherent flexibility of ships throughout their lives. They have trained generations of naval officer, regular and reserve. That capacity will be delivered through an expanded fleet of our Orca-class training vessels, bringing that same philosophy of training to the Naval Reserve, hopefully in the Great Lakes and along the St. Lawrence, as well as along the BC coast as they have to date. The mine countermeasure capability that these ships were built to deliver, initially through towed bodies and the old school type of mine countermeasures that World War II allies, veterans would remember, now exists in remotely operated capabilities that can be deployed from any vessel. So these have given us the ability to move beyond ships in delivering the mission that they used to do. And finally, a Continental Defense Corvette that will realize the ambition of a real warship for Canada that fills the gap between the Harry DeWolf class of Arctic icebreaker and the River-class destroyer now in construction in Halifax. There is no doubt that those three groups of capabilities will be a huge part of the legacy of this incredible fleet. And so, like I said, it's a bittersweet day for us today. There are many outstanding memories on these ships. Incredible sailors like the crew you see assembled before you who have benefited from the great work in building these ships and operating them. But the future is bright. Canada needs a strong Navy to defend the three oceans that protect us. What we've built here inspires us to the future to deliver on that promise and make sure that we remain safe and secure in the Arctic, Atlantic, and Pacific Oceans. Thank you again for coming here today. Much appreciated.
The reviewing officer will now make presentations. I invite Vice-Admiral Topshee to remain forward as mementos are brought forward for presentation to namesake city and sponsors representatives. These memento plaques are made from teak wood taken from HMC ships Brandon, Saskatoon, and Whitehorse respectively, and each bear an embedded ship's coin. They're an enduring reminder of the relationship between the sponsors, the cities, and the ships they held close. I invite Vice-Admiral Topshee to present these mementos as the representatives come forward. I invite His Worship, Mayor Jeff Fawcett of Brandon, to receive a memento of HMCS Brandon on behalf of the city.
We can move if that's better. Absolutely. You tell us where to go. Very adept. Very adept. That black mark was okay. All right.
I invite Susan Rolfe, daughter of HMCS Brandon's sponsor, the late Betty Coleman, to accept the sponsor's memento. I invite Her Worship Mayor Cynthia Block of Saskatoon or other representatives of the City of Saskatoon to come forward to receive mementos. Commodore Pat Montgomery will receive them on behalf of the city and on behalf of the sponsor. I note that the sponsor of HMCS Saskatoon was the late Honorable Sylvia Fedoric. I invite His Worship Mayor Kirk Cameron of Whitehorse to come forward to receive a memento of HMCS Whitehorse on behalf of the city, and to accept the sponsor's memento on behalf of the late Honorable Iona Christensen, sponsor of HMCS Whitehorse.
Former mayor as well, so if you can take this. Oh, yeah, we need to. We'll do both of them.
Thank you, Your Worships. Thank you, sir.
Parade, attention!
We will now conduct the formal paying off of the ships. After reporting to the reviewing officer, the commanding officer will embark the ships. The commanding officer will embark the ships for the last time. The crew will cheer the ships for the last time. The ship's colors, and crucially, their commissioning pennants, will be ceremonially hauled down as the band plays Sunset, signaling formal decommissioning. Then the crew will disembark. You will notice that the crew will not salute as they disembark the ship for the last time, nor will they pipe their commanding officer ashore, because by then, the ships will no longer be commissioned in His Majesty's service. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Derek Frank, will now be piped on board his ships for the final time while they are
Ship's company, remove headdress.
The coxswain, Petty Officer First Class Elizabeth Morin-Fortin, will now lead the crew in a final 3 cheers for the ships before they are paid off.
3 cheers for Pennant, Saskatoon, and Whitehorse! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Ship's company, replace headdress. Attention! Sunset party, fall out!
You will soon see that the ship's colors will be hauled down for the last time. These are the naval jacks forward and the naval ensigns aft. The commissioning pennants, until now continuously flown at the masthead, will also be hauled down to signal formal decommissioning. Then the red and white port flag will be hoisted to signal the ships are out of routine and will no longer observe ceremonial.
Ship's company, facing aft, right, turn. Guard, eastbound, turn.
I invite guests to rise for the hauling down of the colors and for the playing of Sunset. Uniformed guests will salute from the 7th bar of the music, that's marked by a drum strike and bugle, until the bugler sounds the carry on. The commanding officer will shortly give the order to pay off the ships.
Pay off the ship.
With the colors hauled down and the port flag hoisted, the ship's flags will now be ceremonially folded. The paying off pennants belonging to the last captain will be passed to Lieutenant Frank.
Report the colors for Saskatoon. Report the colors for Brandon. Report the colors for Whitehorse.
On order from the commanding officer, Lieutenant Derek Frank, the ceremonial executive officer, Lieutenant Joseph Dooley, will march the paying off crew ashore.
XO, march off the ship's company. Aye, aye, sir. Ship's company, facing forward, about turn. Ship's company, by the left, reform line, quick march.
final commanding officer will now disembark to present the ship's colors to the reviewing officer. I invite Vice-Admiral Topshee to proceed to the dais to receive the colors from the Decommissioning Commanding Officer, Lieutenant Derek Frank, assisted by his command team.
Sir, I present to you the jacks from Brandon, Saskatoon, Whitehorse. Sir, I present to you the ensigns, Brandon, Saskatoon, and Whitehorse. Sir, these ships are now paid off. Permission to carry on with the general salute, Royal Anthem, and our marching.
The former HMC ships Brandon, Saskatoon, and Whitehorse are now paid off and decommissioned. Les anciens navires canadiens de Sa Majesté Brandon, Saskatoon et Whitehorse sont désarmés et retirés du service. To conclude the formal proceedings, the band will lead us in the Royal Anthem, God Save the King. The parade will render a final general salute to the reviewing officer, and then we'll march off the jetty to the notes of Heart of Oak. As the parade marches off, guests are invited to depart the seating area to join behind them as they proceed toward the wardroom to the reception, or to remain here at Bravo Jetty to visit the ship's upper decks, which will be open to visitors until 12:45. Shuttle buses will be available for transport from the jetty to the wardroom and to parking lots until 1300. Pendant que le défilé s'éloigne, les invités sont priés de quitter leur siège pour se joindre derrière la parade en direction du carré des officiers. Ou, si vous préférez, restez ici au quai Bravo pour visiter les ponts supérieurs des navires, qui seront ouverts aux visiteurs jusqu'aux 12h45. Les navettes entre le quai, le carré des officiers et les stationnements seront disponibles jusqu'aux 13h. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Je vous remercie d'avoir participé à cette cérémonie de désarmement. Please rise for the Royal Anthem. Uniformed guests are asked to salute during the anthem.
Parade! General salute, present! Out! General salute, present! Out! Shoulder! Out!
To the Guard, great turnout today. Well done. Thank you for being part of this. And to the ship's company, you have really represented every sailor who served on board those ships well today. Outstanding turnout. Really appreciated the crispness of your drill, your attention to detail, and your service to send these ships off the way they did.